Welcome back, everybody. Today, you can see on the screen, if you're watching us on Zoom or on YouTube, we've got Paul Begala here today with us. Paul is an American political consultant and a political contributor on CNN. He's perhaps best known as an advisor to President Bill Clinton and was instrumental in getting Clinton elected, well, the first time, and I'm guessing probably the second, too. The second was more anticlimactic than the first, obviously. And Paul has a new book he's also going to talk to us today about called You're Fired, The Perfect Guide to Beating Donald Trump. So, Paul, what is the perfect way to beat Donald Trump?
Exactly. Please tell us.
Well, first, guys, thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming back.
Love the pod. It's always good to be back. The best strategist for this year would be the Jack Palance character in City Slickers, where he plays a crusty old cowboy. And he says to Billy Crystal at the end of the movie, I don't mean to spoil it, but he's searching for the meaning of life. And he turns to Billy and tells him the meaning of life. He said, the main thing is always keep the main thing the main thing. Well, with Trump, the main thing is not Trump. It's the voters. People like me, and I'm very candid about this in the book, the whole first chapter is called Mea Culpa. People like me lost sight of that. Right. I was so distracted by Trump's sewer-level character that I didn't make it about voters. I made it about Trump. Democrats, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, they have to make this election about voters. Yes, we should indict Trump, but indict Trump not merely on his sewer-level character, but more importantly on what he has done and failed to do for people. I was so blown away by Michelle Obama at the convention. Yeah, she was phenomenal.
Yep.
But I think the largest impact and the most relatable was Kristen Urquiza, the young woman from Arizona.
That was
her 65-year-old dad, otherwise in good health, lost to COVID. And she said he had no pre-existing condition except he trusted Donald Trump. 170,000 families are going through this now, and most didn't need to die. They don't need to die. That brings it back. That's not just saying, oh, he insulted John McCain, or he's in a Twitter war with Chrissy Teigen, or I'm sorry to go so long, but I'm
please
marinating this. One of the great examples, he uses division for diversion. Now, that doesn't excuse his racism, xenophobia, Islamophobia, transphobia, homophobia, but he uses it to distract us from the really crappy job he's doing in office. So, example, Hurricane Maria is barreling down on Puerto Rico, and it's wiping out the homes and lives and livelihoods of millions of our fellow Americans. Right. Instead of doing something about it, you know what he did? That's when he attacked Colin Kaepernick for taking a knee during the national anthem. Now,
I didn't even remember that was the timing.
That was the timing. I'd forgotten too until I was doing the research.
Right. Yeah.
Did he mean it? Does he say and do racist things? There's no question. I mean, John Lewis himself said Donald Trump is a racist. I believe Mr. Lewis. But I also know he uses that racism and the other divisions to divert the cameras when he's really screwing up.
Right.
Kristen Urquiza knows you can't divert the cameras from a deadly pandemic that he has made worse, much less fought against.
So, I think it's a terrific. I was going to say, I think it's a terrific point. I remember I did some work with Friends of Democracy Super PAC, I think back in about 2012 or so. And every time we would look at the numbers, the polling, and what is common sense would come out in these numbers, which is we were talking about campaign finance reform. And if you just went after these guys for how corrupt they were, sure. I mean, you were insulting them and people didn't like them, but it was when you brought it back to how that was hurting people's lives because they put money, because Trump is golfing, he's not spending it on this. If it's just an attack, sometimes people even get more defensive if it's just an attack on this character. Whereas you're pointing out how his corruption, his incompetence is hurting you economically with the pandemic. I couldn't agree more with what you're saying.
Paul, let me ask you something with that in mind. Both you and Cliff talking right now got me thinking of 2016, and I don't know if I agree, but some of the criticism is that we spent so much time focusing on what a bad guy Trump was that it didn't build up Hillary enough. Are we risking the same now, or is the situation so much different that we have to focus on what a bad president he is because he's been president?
I think it is different. In my book, I have absolutely no criticism of Hillary or Robbie Mook, her campaign manager, or John Podesta, chairman. Not that they didn't make mistakes, but
and not just them. I mean, all of us. I spent a lot of my time going after him.
Well, yeah. I do think that Democrats need a coherent, positive economic narrative. And I think in the blurry of position papers that Hillary's campaign put out, that was lost. I'm not seeing, Joe's got plenty of substance in position papers. Right. I'm less worried about that with Joe for a couple of reasons. First, the Build Back Better plan is quite good. Okay. I thought his speech on race and reconciliation was quite good. He's got some positive stuff. I do have recommendations for other things he should be doing. Right. But the whole, I wish this had come out before I wrote the book. The whole book can be encapsulated in a piece I saw in The Onion last week. It said, undecided.
Kind of like the whole Trump presidency.
It's so 2020. Right. It's so 2022.
This is the perfect analysis. What they wrote is, undecided voter just wants to learn a little bit more about Donald Trump. Right? That's preposterous. We know all this, but we don't know the impact on people's lives. So that Cliff is right. And this is on me. I advised the pro-Hillary super PAC. We had $190 million. We ran great ads. I loved them.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it was insufficiently connected to the outcomes of the lives of a farmer in Wisconsin, a retiree in Pennsylvania, an office worker in Michigan, right? And that's why I loved Michelle's talk, so particularly Kristen.
Yeah.
Gosh, we're a huge percentage of the population now who knows someone who's had COVID and even knows someone who's been lost.
I lost a family member just to,
God, Cliff, I'm sorry.
No, I appreciate it. And I'm not going for the, sympathy. I'm just making the point that there's a lot of us out there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And so we can't, that's why Trump's distractions and diversions are not working anymore.
Right. Well, you know what? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt, but basically what you're saying is 2016, we were talking about what a bad guy he was and what he might do. Now we can say what a bad guy he is. And guess what? That's the reason you can't visit mom. That's the reason grandma's dead. That's the reason you're unemployed.
But it's almost like, and I want to agree with Paul, and first of all, say, Paul, a big thing for you to say on you, but it's on all of us. I think we all, John and I have whatever
we went after Trump
platforms we have,
right?
And we went to spend a lot of time, because we find this person to be so just disgusting in so many ways. But that doesn't mean for regular people that don't pay attention to this stuff the way we do. They want to know how they know that's already built in. They know his character. They want to know, how is it affecting my life? And we've got a couple of very clear examples now with the economy and COVID and a few other things, bounties on soldiers when we're talking certainly to veterans. And I think these are the kinds of things, how it's affecting them is what we should be talking about.
I think that's right. And I think too many of us, I'd say I did not fall into this trap because I had family and friends who voted for Trump. But too many Democrats attack and denigrate Trump voters rather than Trump. My view is they fell for a con. And they didn't fall for a con because they're dumb. It's because they wanted to. But I think Trump spoke to the alienation that a lot of people felt.
Right.
He spoke to the anger. He had all the right enemies. One of my friends who supports Trump says, of course he's a pig. I can't stand the guy. He's just an animal. He's a pig, and I hate him. But he has all the right enemies. The libs, the media, the blah, blah. And I think we can decouple some, just a few. We don't need too many. Trump voters away from him, while motivating the base. And it's important not to fall into this trap of hating people who voted for Trump. First off, it's a bad way to live your life. Second, any of us are prone to fall for a con we want to believe. Right. I worked years ago for Frank Lautenberg, passed away now. He was a CEO, founder of automatic data processing, a tech pioneer, multi-millionaire CEO, wound up in the Senate. Frank was as good a businessman as this country has produced in the last 50 years. He invested some of his foundation with Bernie Madoff.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, Frank, he's like the most brilliant business. How did you fall for this? You know what he said? He said, because I wanted to. I wanted to believe him. Well, that farmer in Pennsylvania who spoke at the convention, he wanted to believe Trump. He wanted to believe that, a simple, stupid, scapegoating wrecking ball would fix everything in Washington. There were a lot of people.
The folks up northeast, 3 hours northeast from me, near the Lordstown plant. It's the same thing, right? They wanted, and you understand why they wanted to believe, because what was happening wasn't working for them. And so.
And he's a good con man. Let's face it. He also does a very good con.
He does. He does. He conned all the big banks. He conned Deutsche Bank or however he got
Trump
financing.
Stakes, Trump University, I mean, each con, there's a lot of people that fall into the
Trump vodka and Trump wine, and the man doesn't even drink.
Yeah.
He's the drunkest sober person in the world. Thank God he doesn't drink. I would say that's one great attribute about it.
Yeah.
But that's the point. And I'm not denying the role that race plays. Yeah, I grew up in Missouri City, Texas, and it was a very racist place at a very racist time. I get that. But it's the fallacy of composition. All the racists are Trump voters. But not all the Trump voters are racists. You know, all giraffes are animals, but not all animals are giraffes. And so when we paint the entire 62 million people who voted for Trump as racist, it's self-defeating. It's also inaccurate and denigrating. And it's no way to run a country. We do have to love and support folks who did not vote for Trump. I saw that Joe Biden said that this week. He went out of his way to say, I want to be the president, including and especially for people who don't vote for me.
Well, Cliff, let me ask real quick, Cliff, but why is he still at 40%?
That's it. I think it's the things we're talking about.
It's not just crazy in something in an intellectual sense that annoys us, but it's important, obviously, for the election. Why are 40% of the people allegedly still hanging on to this guy?
You know, I do think. Look,
I have family members. Yeah. By the way, real quick, because what
do they say, John? What do they say?
I mentioned this to David Frum once, and I'm not going to get details because God knows if somebody who knows them sees this. But I mentioned how a family member kept trying to sort of justify Trump and kept saying, "But I don't like him. I didn't want to vote for him. But that Hillary." Right. Well, this time, guess what happened? This time was that Joe Biden. You know, I've heard there's sexual stuff about him, and I went, "You heard? What about the other guy?" And I heard he might be a little corrupt. What about the other guy? And then I got, well, it's all going to depend who his VP is. And I said, you know what? There is no way you're continging it on the VP. You're trying to find they're trying to find reasons to vote for him because they're afraid to say they like the guy.
They belong to a certain group, John. I mean, we've seen this, right? They belong.
And they're not crazy.
I don't mean this disrespectfully. It's tribalism. They're you've got friends, you've got family, you've got your neighborhood, your community, and people feel very strongly one way. It's why I think some of those Republican voters against Trump ads are so good because you need to show people that others like them who feel the same way, who sat there and said, and you asked quickly, Paul, like, what did your family members say to John? What I can say, the ones I know, is the stuff that he says and the stuff that Fox says works. In other words, what they end up saying is what you said earlier, which is he has all the right enemies. Well, I know that he's terrible. I know he did this and he messed up that, but that liberal media and those guys who are lying about him, and these guys are all crooks. So I'm going to go with the one who's a Republican. Right. I mean, it's like that kind of thing.
But does character not matter, Paul? Does character not matter though? Is that it? It literally is how it hits you in the wallet, which I appreciate, of course.
But if you can convince through Fox News that the character, they can take that issue away by saying all these guys are terrible, which is what they do, then they've effectively done that.
Right. All politicians do blah, blah.
Right. And so then it becomes a matter of identity. And the right always accuses us of playing identity politics, which, again, I think is preposterous because we have such a diverse party. Right. So it's much harder. But what Trump has done is give a really hardcore minority of the country a sense of belonging, a sense of identity, a sense of empowerment, and feed their sense of grievance. Right. So it becomes just a team sport. I spend a ton of time, the majority of my life these days, in rural America. And I see more Trump flags. I don't think I've ever seen flags for a politician before. These are folks not of great means who are shelling out $20.
There aren't any Obama flags. We didn't have flags. You're right. I never thought about that.
Right. I mean, some people might fly like an Irish flag or a rainbow flag. I fly the Texas flag. I live in Virginia. But that's a really deep sense of identity. That's more than a bumper sticker or a yard sign. And he gives them that. Yeah. And we can't win them all. Look, nobody's going to get 100%. Yeah. But all we have to do is lose less badly based on a record where that wrecking ball has gone right through rural America. It's gone right through Trump voters. By the way, he hadn't laid a glove on Beyonce. She's doing great. You know what I mean? I mean, the people you want to piss off. Barbara Streisand is still great, in her mansion in Malibu, right?
We can even look it up on. Yeah, good.
Right. So it's the folks. I actually worked hard on the whole book on the chapter on rural America. I grew up in a small town, And I sent it off. I wrote the chapter, did a ton of research, and I sent it off to the people I know who care most and have done the most for rural Americans who are progressive. Willie Nelson and his wife, Annie.
Oh, wow.
Willie and Annie have been champions of family farmers. And it's an Austin thing. I know them a little bit. And they loved it. And Willie and Annie, they're like to the left of Bernie Sanders. They're so progressive. And yet folks in rural America love them. And in part because they love first, right? They listen, they care, They advocate, they fight. I do think too many Democrats walked away from rural America, particularly when the opioid crisis swept through. We should have been all over that. And by the way, Trump's made it worse. But we have almost as many people every single year dying of opioids as we lost in the entire Vietnam War in 20 years. 48,000 people last year. 48,000. We lost to opioids alone. We lost over 30,000 to gun violence. A huge percentage of them in rural America. The notion, this is what
what he's doing with the USPS right now is an attack on rural America, quite frankly.
It's a total lifeline to rural America. I did an event for Al Gross. Dr. Al Gross is the independent candidate running for Senate in Alaska. Well,
he's got a shot there from what I see.
He's got a real shot. I think he's going to win. And in part because he knows he's like fourth or fifth generation Alaskan. And he knows that the post office, the postal system is the lifeline to rural America.
Oh, yes.
So we can make a case there. And actually, I really feel like Democrats are doing that now. And I chastise myself more than like the party and the candidates. But I think our party is doing a much better job of reaching out to rural folks. A hell of a lot better than the Republicans are doing, reaching out to people in the cities.
Well, Cliff, I don't mean to keep jumping in with it.
No, go.
But let me ask you on these lines. Devil's advocate. I'm not going to say I'm worried about this, but devil's advocate. Do we care that I can't enunciate the 2 or 3 policies that Biden is going to do And again, this was something in 2016. I didn't like the fact that when people asked me, what is Hillary going to do? I was kind of like, well, there's an education plan and there's like 1,000, Elizabeth Warren, there's like 1,000 others, which I like as a wonk, but I couldn't enunciate a wall and the Muslims. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, even 2 or 3 themes, even more than we need. I want that.
Well, he's bringing the bring us back better kind of thing. I get I'm an honest guy and this guy's a pig. Okay, but does he need 2 or 3 policies that people can say, oh yeah, he's going to do boom? Or is this a different election?
Yes. No, I think, and again, I love Hillary. I love Senator Warren.
We're not knocking Hillary. I mean, because people get upset.
No,
we're not going
or Elizabeth Warren.
Right.
Elizabeth Warren had the slogan, I've got a plan for that.
Yeah.
This is like one of my maxims of politics. A position paper or a plan, absent values and biography that animate it, is of only very marginal value.
Yep.
So what Joe has Build Back Better, which I like a lot.
Okay.
What I'm pushing for, though, publicly, obviously, I'm doing it on your show, and in the book, is national service.
Oh, that's interesting.
I worked for Dick Gephardt in '88 when Joe ran the first time, and I used to travel with Dick, and I was his speechwriter. But I saw Joe Biden give that stump speech 100 times, and he had a phrase in there about how he was motivated to go into public service when he saw the footage of a hatless young man standing on the steps of the Capitol, asking not what your country can do for you. Right. And the way he talked about JFK, his generation's hero and martyred champion, moved him to public service. So Joe's whole life has been about public service. And his son Bo's life was all about public service.
Right.
I want him to extend that to national service. We have 75,000 people in AmeriCorps. I'm proud that my boss, Bill Clinton,
I was going to say, you guys, that was a big theme in '92, obviously.
It was. Because same thing, Clinton, Obama, these people motivated by service. By the way, both Presidents Bush were wonderful on service. So it's a bipartisan thing. But we're in a crisis now where we have 75,000 people in AmeriCorps. We have 45 million Americans between the ages of 20 and 30. And I bet you their unemployment rate's like 40%. They're getting killed by COVID.
Right.
So why not throw open the doors of national service? Throw it open to 1 million people. Chris Coons, who has Joe's old seat in the Senate, has a bill to open up AmeriCorps from 75,000 to 1 million. I call that a good start. And it's not just because it's good policy, because Joe's central ethos are 2 things, I think: service, public service over private gain, and unity and community over separation and division.
They're good to make him, put him in opposition to the other guy who's all about
Exactly. So I think that is animated by Joe's biography and his values. It also would be a hell of a great policy. It'd be terrific. We could have a COVID corps to help folks who are fighting this pandemic. We could have a kids corps.
Just for contact tracing alone.
Right.
Tracing and testing.
Yeah.
Contact. I talked to a young person in her 20s who's doing contact tracing, and she's doing it because she loves her fellow Americans, and I think that if we called on these young people to serve, as the father of 4 20-somethings and a professor at Georgetown, I know hundreds and hundreds of young people in that generation. I swear to you, they're going to be the greatest generation redux. They are just terrific. I don't understand these boomers pissing all over these young people. They're so much better than my generation. And if we call on them the way JFK called upon the boomers,
right,
they will answer. So anyway, that's what I want Joe to do. You're right. You're right. Joe needs
but Generation X signature. Is the best generation of all, you can admit, right?
I think so.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding with you.
No, but he's younger. Whatever's after that, Z.
No, I'm an Xer. I'm just having fun with you. I'm just being an idiot.
I kind of like.
Oh my gosh!
Isn't Z the Parkland kids? Are they Z?
I don't even know the labels.
But yeah. Anyway,
but what you're saying,
I just think young people in their 20s will save this freaking country. They will save us all. And that's better than just, the Green New Deal or something, because it has to be rooted in your values. And Clinton taught me so much. The life you've lived.
And let me ask you this. I really want to ask you this because I was thinking about the life that Joe's lived and a policy that could make a big difference right now. So look, we've got kids going back to school. There's some of it's virtual, some of it's not. We're lucky, my wife and I, because we have our own schedules, our firms, and we have the kind of flexibility most people don't have. Do you think sort of because of what Joe went through, losing his family and taking care of his kids, a universal childcare like policy coming from him because it would be rooted in his values, his lived experience, and what people are now going through who have to make these choices with COVID, whose kids may be home. Do you think that's the kind of thing that maybe?
Yes.
I'm just throwing it out there.
Yes. His story and his family's. His sister Valerie helped enormously when his first wife passed. Their struggle is our struggle, and that's a perfect example, Cliff. I went back, looked at President Clinton's convention address in 1992, and I worked on it. We came into that convention. Yeah, Clinton had won, but we were in a weak 3rd place. We were at 24%.
Never
going into that convention.
Yeah.
And people, they thought Clinton was smart, but what they knew about him was he'd gone to these fancy Ivy League and English schools, that he'd been accused of cheating on his wife, he'd been accused of dodging the draft, and he was a baby boomer. They stitched that all together. They thought he was a spoiled rich brat tooling around in his father's Alfa Romeo. Yeah. So we needed to add more stars to the constellation. And that was where the Man from Hope came from. But it wasn't simply enough to say his father died before he was born. He was raised poor. He had an abusive stepfather who he stood up to, and he got scholarships. We had to then add his biography to his agenda. And that's kind of what we've been talking about. This is why Joe's, and if you look at that speech, seriously, I commend it. It's a pretty good speech because each policy begins with, my grandfather, had an elementary school education. He ran a country store in Hope, Arkansas. But he treated, in segregated South in the 40s, he treated his black customers as white customers equally. He let them both shop in the store. He extended credit to both of them. And he says, I stood behind that counter as a little boy and I looked up to people everybody else looked down on. So he rooted his commitment to racial justice and civil rights in his lived experience. Joe can do that with childcare, Cliff. I think it's a great idea.
So here's my question for you, Paul. Do you think that Donald Trump's pardoning of Susan B. Anthony is going to win him the women's vote?
He did that this morning, just so folks know.
As I feel like it makes up for everything he's ever done that's negative for women, right?
Yeah. Trump once sexually harassed Susan B. Anthony, by the way. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Grab him
if
by
she'd
the
been
pardon.
Around.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I mean, does he think women are gonna? Will this work? Will this help at all, Paul?
No.
It's for women, obviously. I guess, right?
No.
And what's the
170,000?
Or he's pro-voting? Is that the idea? He's covering himself on the voting?
No, I just think he's a person of impulses, and he thinks his voters are stupid.
Who's the chick on the coin? Let's pardon her.
Yeah. Or the suburban housewives. Or there's my African American.
Oh yeah.
He thinks his voters are stupid, and these stupid, clumsy things like this are going to work. That's not. I mean, when's the last time you were out somewhere and someone said to you, this COVID thing is closed my small business. My wife's out of work. My kid can't go to school. My nana is locked in a nursing home and can't get out. I sure hope the president pardons Susan B. Anthony.
Yeah.
Every day.
What the hell?
Yeah. Actually, you know what? It's part of a larger theme. And who was it last night that went off on him during the convention? It was either during the convention or it was afterwards. I can't remember now. But they went off on him saying how Bernie Sanders, he said all of these executive orders, Bernie didn't say bullshit, but Bernie said they're like fluff. They're pretending to do something and they don't do anything. Right. So much of what Trump does is making stuff up as I'm going, either pronouncing, right? I'm going to do this and then he doesn't, or like the executive orders, I'm going to continue the eviction moratorium. He did.
Best example ever. Infrastructure week.
Right. Oh, actually, that's true. Yeah, but this is another example where he promises and he says and he's gonna, and that's part of it too. They're up to, Jared Kushner said last night, they're up to 300 miles on the border wall. No, and Wolf let him get away with this. They're up to 3 miles on the border wall. Actually, 3 new miles is what they had last count I saw. And they're now claiming it's almost, mind you, almost finished with 300. Isn't the border like 2,000 miles or something?
Oh, it's over 2,000. It's so stupid.
3 miles is almost finished because if you lie about everything, then lie about winning. We're done. Right. We did it.
Right. I do think he is self-delusional. And I believe that he thinks his voters are stupid. I don't.
Yes, I think so. I think he does think that. Yeah.
And so you just say these things. Keep in mind, one of the reasons, probably the biggest reason he's president, which I missed, is for 14 years, every Thursday he was in our living room in a cardboard set, pretending to be a hard-hitting businessman. Yeah. That was all bullshit, too. That was all an act. It was a TV show. It wasn't real.
Oh, knowing now what he is, could you imagine Trump sitting there and very intelligently having the discussion and going, I'm sorry, you're going to have to be fired. He'd be like, well,
this guy, Miles Taylor, the chief of staff of the Department of Homeland Security, came out yesterday.
Right.
He was a Trump guy in a Trump administration and was so appalled at how Trump actually conducts himself. And he's been in the Oval Office with Donald Trump. He claims that Donald Trump said to allow Californians who'd lost their homes in a wildfire to suffer and get no aid because their state didn't vote for Donald Trump. Yeah. He said that Trump, when they approached him with terrorist warnings and other security warnings, did not care. And I think that when reality meets the reality show, Trump just goes back to the reality show. And if I had to do it over again, I wouldn't do it this year. I would have had ads of him in a cardboard set with the set collapsing around him as his businesses collapse. And then cut to the plumber who he bankrupted because he didn't pay his bills. Right. His casino went under. Right. The blackjack dealer who got his health care canceled because Trump couldn't manage a casino. If you can't make a profit running a casino, you're not a businessman.
Right. They hand you money for nothing. Literally just hand it to you.
Oh, in a casino, you mean? Right. And
yes.
All you have to do is have the machine run and it's geared to win for the owner, right?
You have no light. You basically have no windows. People don't know what time it is. You give them booze and they give you their money, and he found a way to lose that way. It's incredible.
But see, this is the point. Every time the Democrats talk about Trump, it has to be in context to your life.
Yeah. Well, so what are somebody the ads, then Paul, what are the ads this time? Then what are the ads this time? You were just saying the ads last time. What are the perfect ads this time then?
I think it begins and ends with COVID.
Okay.
The Christian
has COVID hit enough people yet? I mean, we talked about this at the beginning, but honestly, I have one aunt that had it, and God knows, 88 years old, she had a slight fever and got over it. We were all like, and frankly, no, thank God, but it also sent the message to my family that even Aunt so-and-so got it, and it was nothing, right?
Well, it has
enough people been touched by it.
All of us.
Economically, we've been touched. Yes.
Right. So we've had an economic collapse, which he's done nothing about. We've had a public health crisis, a pandemic of disease. I think it begins with that. And so you look and see what he did and failed to do to address this. And then you extend it to the news of the day, right? Which is the Postal Service. His war on the post office, instead of only talking about how it's going to affect our right to vote in 78 days, right now, 330,000 seniors who are veterans get their prescription drugs through the mail.
Yep.
330,000 American veterans who put on the uniform and put their lives on the line are being denied their meds on time because Trump is screwing around with the postal system.
Other seniors, like my mom. My mom is freaking out because she's 90 years old and she's going, okay, what do I do? Because one of her insurance things requires she uses God knows what online mail thing, right?
They make you use the mail.
They make you use it. So she's trying to figure out what to do because I've been telling her and she's been hearing 2-3 week delays. They don't.
Right.
I've watched her before call, and she's like, "I've got 3 pills left." This is before the troubles. Now, I've got 3 pills left. You've got to get it sent now, ma'am. We're backlogged. Blah, blah, blah. This is in normal times. Imagine now. Right. And mind you, it took. I even had to think about it a little bit, but you got to think of what medicine people are taking, right? Like my statin for my cholesterol, okay. But if you're on antidepressants, you can't miss 1 dose. If you're on a cancer drug, you can't miss anything. If you're on stuff for your heart, for your blood pressure, you miss the dose and your blood pressure goes back to 200. I mean, people can't miss, especially when they're older, you can't miss drugs.
Right. And so I think, and by the way, there's still almost 600,000 seniors who still get their Social Security check through the mail.
Like, are you sure? Because I Googled 100%. That, and you know what? Because Obama said it too, and I Googled it and I read, oh no, they all come electronically, and I said, okay.
Well, statistically they do. This is the thing. 99.1% of Social Security recipients get their benefits electronically.
Okay.
But guess what? That 0.9%, almost 1%, is still 591,000, because I looked it up too. I'm proud to say I have 750 citations in this book. I'm fanatical about accuracy.
591,000 people are still getting Social Security by mail.
591,000. Of course, Jesus. Barack Obama was right. The right has a point, though. They're right when they say, they say everybody. And that's close enough, but not for people's livelihoods, not for their Social Security. There's still 591,000.
The margin of error is huge.
Yes, right. 600,000 people nearly is a lot of people.
Yeah. The N is so high that you're getting 591,000. Who still get their Social Security check through the mail. So making the mail not just about Trump.
Veterans that you said they get their
330,000 veterans.
You start getting
15% of the whole workforce of the U.S. postal system are veterans. It has been a terrific second career for veterans, and he's screwing them over.
Why is nobody giving us talking points like this? This is a complaint I have had. And now for folks watching, this is a little inside baseball, but not really, because it's a matter of how the sausage is made is going to affect whether we win. I have complained for years that, as an influencer, Cliff and I are not, my friends always say we're like B-list celebrities.
You're on the A-list.
You're
on D+. I'm about D+, which I'll take.
But you know what I mean. I'm saying we have influence in our own ways, all of us. And it has always been impossible to get talking points on the issue of the day. For example, I said a couple months ago, I want a 1-pager constantly updated that gives me the top 10 points of how Trump screwed up on, because everyone says, well, no, he didn't know. And I heard Pelosi went to some rally on March 1st in San Francisco. I want the top 10 points. Keep it. And what you were just talking about right now, detail it for me. Detail, literally. I had to Google the Social Security stuff and then got a wrong answer. No one told me 591,000 people on Social Security were getting it by check. Where are those talking points? We don't organize on our side sometimes. It drives me crazy.
Well, literally that's why I wrote this book. Well, there's 2 parts of every campaign: message and delivery. And many Democratic leaders, many Democratic elites, many Democratic strategists focus on delivery exclusively.
What does delivery mean? What do you mean by delivery?
Door to door, digital, radio, direct mail, email, phone bank, text. I have been in more effing meetings where all we talked about was the method of delivery. We're going to knock 1 million doors.
Right.
I won't say who, but one of the party chairmen, one of the many I've worked with, was talking about this. We're going to knock on 1 million doors this weekend. And I started screaming. I said, what do we say if they answer the door? What if Aunt Ethel is home? What does my kid say to her? Right. He's like, well, we're going into every county in the state. Shut up.
Right.
What are you for? What are you against?
Right.
You have to have good delivery. You really do. And I do admire. I used to knock doors. That's how I got into this business. It's like everybody. By the way, when you knock doors, bring a dog biscuit. Very helpful.
Oh, that's really cute.
Bring a pocket full. You want those dogs to like you. Believe me.
That really is good. Very as a dog owner too, I would love the fact that you suddenly became interested in my dog. I'd be like, oh,
right. Because if you love Gus is my dog. If you love Gus, then I love you.
Yeah.
But I started to denigrate. You know why? It's so much easier because delivery is simply mechanistic. It's just how do I organize my volunteers, my precinct chairs, my counties, my states? And we have all these wonderful tools. And this is a democratic impulse, right? We're going to outwork them. We have the people. They have the money. I believe all that. But somebody needs to stand up and say, whoa, what are we for? And I think that was the genius of Barack Obama.
Whose job is it?
Well, right now it's become Joe's job, this week.
Okay.
But until then, I've taken it on. It's just something. That's why I write these books.
Then send me talking points, please.
Yes, I'll say. You got I got to send you the book.
No, actually, your publicist did. Thank you. But yeah, that's
good.
But you know what I mean. But I'm saying, like, on a weekly basis, when issues like the postal stuff, it's obviously exploded. We should, and maybe this is also like my background in staffing people. Immediately, I go, okay, we need a one-pager that spells it out. Maybe even two. One deeper one that's a couple pages.
Right.
One that's like 2 paragraphs. 3 talking points, 10 talking points, right? What are the points if I were going on TV today, what are the 3 talking points I need? I don't have those. And by the way, what we also want them for is I want to share them on Twitter so that you folks watching can then share the talking points. But I don't even have them.
I will say this has been my mission since I launched this book. Every single day, except the day Trump's brother died when I stood down. But every single day, I've posted a new reason to fire Trump. Right. Straight out of the book. This is what we like, James Carville and I have been business partners 37 years. I still talk to him every single day. This is all we talk about. Rahm Emanuel. This is all we talk about. We talk about the content, the message, not the delivery. We've never had a conversation where we're like, oh, I wish we were knocking more doors in Kenosha. Someone has to worry about that. It's Ben Wickler, the party chair in Wisconsin, who's terrific. But we're thinking about what to say. And I think that's what the party leaders need to be doing. I'm trying to do it on my own. I no longer advise any politicians or PACs for a living. I do it voluntarily, but I don't do it anymore. I'm out of that business. But so I'm trying really through my role as a commentator, as a writer, as a CNN contributor, to put this into the atmosphere that way.
Hey, we need it. That's important. And and what the key points are and who the key groups are we're talking to. Because again, not everybody just would know that everybody should be appalled by this. But again, who's being affected? The elderly, veterans, people in rural areas.
There's 3, to me, really interesting pools of voters. First, there's the rising American electorate. It's a Democratic base. It's people of color, young people, unmarried women, and the religiously unaffiliated, seculars. Those 4 groups are now a majority of the country. It's amazing. It's like 65% or something. It's a huge majority. Now, they're not always a majority of voters. So this is why, like, the mechanisms of voting, I've spent over a decade as an advisor to the Voter Participation Center. It's a terrific group, registers voters in that rising American electorate, targets young people, people of color, unmarried women, secular voters. So that's the first. Democrats have to electrify their base or they're not even a party. That's the first step. It's the most important step. Without that, nothing. The second step, though, is to try to reach some swing voters. The swing voters are now all in the suburbs. The places that used to be the most Republican are now very, very open to voting Democratic. So Democrats have to reach out to them. And then the third is chip away at rural voters, some of Trump's base. Democrats need to do all 3. They need to do all 3. And they have to have a message that unifies all 3. You can't simply, this is what Trump does. He goes to one group and he says, I've had the lowest black unemployment in history. He goes to another group and he says, I pardon Susan B. Anthony. He goes to another group. He says, Joe's going to destroy the suburbs. You need a unifying message. You need web issues that stick folks together. And the truth is, if I tell you about a place where jobs are gone and they've been gutted, where crime and domestic violence especially has skyrocketed, where gun deaths and suicide are out of control, where drug deaths are at a crisis level, you have no idea if I'm talking about an impoverished inner city or a rural area. Because the pain is the same. The pain is the same. And Trump doesn't feel your pain, and I believe Joe does. So you can take that same message, and take it to the cities, the suburbs, and the rural areas. And that's what I'm looking for, is a content that unites us together. This is the key to uniting a broad, diverse coalition. How about the Democrats had John Kasich, who I looked it up. John had an 88% rating for the American Conservative Union. and Bernie Sanders, who had a 6. Bernie had the lowest rating.
I'm surprised he had a 6.
I was surprised it was a 6.
Guns? Maybe guns.
Living here, living
Probably
here in
guns at the
Ohio,
beginning.
like I've fought Kasich, on all sorts of things.
Yeah.
He went after choice, and
Yeah.
he went, and these other things, and yet, and John, I know agrees with me. We so much disagreed with some folks who are like, why is Kasich speaking? And we're trying to say, look, if this is a guy that I disagreed with so often and I fought on so much, but he is building this sort of center right all the way to the sort of social democracy left of Bernie Sanders. Right. That's the coalition you want here. Right. The same with Susan Molinari. I was sitting there and I was like, remember her? I mean, she was a Republican House leader. Yeah. Even when they kicked her out of leadership for being pro-choice, I mean, she remained a steadfast partisan Republican. She was the entire time that I remember her.
She's Elise Stefanik. She's kind of like Elise Stefanik. I see that same with Susan Molinari. That kind of this woman firebrand kind of conservative. Even though she might have had some liberal side, well, Stefanik has liberal sides to her too.
I think Molinari is mostly conservative. She just was pro-choice and a few other things. And even once the party made her pay for that, she still stayed so loyal. So that she's stepped away now. I feel like that's such a big deal.
Quick. I helped run the campaign against Christy Todd Whitman when she ran for governor. I was working for Jim Florio. And
I still remember that ad you got. You did an ad with assault rifles, and you almost won that one. That was close.
Yeah, but we lost. Years later, I got to know her and I met her, and we spent a ton of money, and it was 100% negative. All we did was bash that poor woman, and she stood up to that assault and turned out to be a deeply good person, and I think a pretty good governor. And I told her that, and she's like, "Yeah, a lot of good it does me now," but. We have to be able to get past these old grievances. I'm now on the same side as George Conway. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Right. George tried to impeach my boss. Paul, right. I'm on the same side as Steve Schmidt. I wrote a whole book attacking John McCain on the issues.
Let me pull you a little more meta here.
Uh-huh.
Tell people why we should be working with these people. Because Cliff and I, we've had a lot of arguments, maybe not arguments, but people have been very upset online, especially about Kasich speaking. Right? They want AOC to have more time. They don't think Kasich should be there at all. What's the purpose of a convention, A? Who are you really trying to get? And B, what is the propriety of working with people whose, at least ideologically, we'd hate each other? Amanda Carpenter.
Right.
Ideologically, Amanda and I don't think we agree on anything. But
she helped edit an op-ed by Joe Walsh.
Right.
Oh, that's right. Joe.
I was calling him every name in the book 5 years ago. We both laughed about that. I mean, he's with us now. So even if I disagree with him on issues, if he's going to help bring independent Midwestern men who are more conservative, who've broken away from Trump and are kind of like, let's call it Biden curious, then let's get that.
Bi-curious, just shorten it.
Exactly. I was thinking that, but go ahead.
Let me put a finer point. But what they're saying is, but when you reach out to the right like this to use them as talking mouthpieces, you are turning off the left. And you need to convince the Bernie voters to vote too. What's the answer there?
There's no evidence that it turns off the left. There's no evidence that winning disappoints the Democratic base. None. The Joe Biden got more votes than any Democrat in history winning his primary.
Right.
More than Barack, more than Hillary, more than Bill. He got 17,660,000 votes.
Right.
He dominates this party, and he got it on a message of unity and moderation. Period. Mm-hmm. Now the left is busting their tails for a guy who's probably their third or fourth or fifth choice. I think it's so admirable. It's so impressive. And they're doing it, I think, because they're practical and they want progress, not perfection. They're doing it because they hate Trump, and we can't. Bernie said this last night. He means it.
He gave a great speech last night.
He was great.
And I've been hit for being critical of Bernie before. He was terrific last night.
I don't share his politics, but I love Bernie. I've known him since he came to the Hill. I was a young staffer. He was a young socialist coming to the Congress. I think the world of him. I think he's really impressive. So it doesn't, as long as we're not campaigning on Kasich's right-wing agenda.
Right.
Reagan used to say this. He said, when people endorse me, they endorse my agenda. I don't endorse theirs.
Yes.
I don't want Joe to compromise on gay rights or women's rights or gun safety. And he's not.
We're not turning any of that over to Kasich.
Right. But here's what a convention is for. To take a guy who got 17,660,000 votes and get him to 70 million. That's what he's going to take. It's going to take 70 million votes to defeat Trump, and he's got 17.6. The road from 17 to 70 is crowded with moderates, crowded with Trump voters, crowded with suburban swing voters. You have to motivate your base. You do. And at the same time, you have to stitch them together.
And those voters, seriously, the ones you're talking about, in the state that you're from and the state that I'm sitting in, literally could be the difference.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. We have a broad, diverse party. But look at what Nancy Pelosi did. She won 41 seats in Trump country. 41. We only needed 23. She won 41. She did it with this formula. First, diversity. More women, more people of color than we've ever had run. The majority of the candidates were women or people of color or both.
Yep.
So diversity matters. By the way, diversity of life experience. Huge numbers of national security and military folks.
Yeah.
So diversity matters deeply to this party. I agree with Nancy. But second, moderation. She found candidates who fit the district. So like I write about Sharice David in the book. She is a Native American lesbian, former professional mixed martial arts fighter.
She's so cool. I was so impressed by her.
Also a congresswoman from Kansas, where they hunt us down with dogs. So the notion that diversity pulls you left is crazy, right? So
I was going to say they hunt all three of us down like dogs, gay and liberal.
Right, and you pointed that out, Paul. I mean, and look at what the dividends that are paid from that, which is Sharice Davids wins, right? We win that governor's race in Kansas.
Right.
Who thought that could happen? And now with Barbara Bollier, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, which I hope Bollier, I was going to use, I speak French, but I didn't know if she still went with the font. So, I mean, she's only down in that last poll by a point or two. Like the Republican marshal's only at about 45, 46. I mean, it could happen.
I did a fundraiser for Barbara last week, and she's just terrific. She's a former Republican member of the Kansas legislature.
Right.
Wow. Should we welcome her into the tent?
That moderate suburban woman that we want, she's that.
Right. So that's what you want. You want, and I praise AOC in the book. I think she's a phenom. She's remarkable. She's really gifted. But that which works in the Bronx and Queens is not necessarily going to work in Kansas.
Right.
And so we have to be diverse in all respects. And I think that's where Pelosi has led us. That's where Joe is leading us. Right. It's much harder, with Trump. If you're not 100% Trumper, he just hates you. My gosh, he attacked Mia Love, the only African-American woman in Congress from the Republican Party. Right. She's now an ex-Congress member, in part because Trump undermined her. Right. Well, what the hell?
Same with Curbelo down in Florida.
Right. Carlos Curbelo. So he drives everybody away. I'm a person of faith, as you know, and there's two kinds of churches: those who seek out converts and those who hunt down heretics.
Right.
Hey, Joe Biden wants to seek out converts. He wants John Kasich in the party. Good God, I'm in common cause with Bill Kristol. Who'd have thought?
I know. All of us. Yeah.
But look, I'm a Catholic. I used to turn at church and see Newt Gingrich.
Yeah.
I would see Barbara Comstock. I also would see Ethel Kennedy and Terry McAuliffe. My parish is very politically diverse.
Yeah, clearly.
Apparently, yeah.
So, but that's what I want in a church. I never learned anything from a vigorous agreement, right? I want, Trump can hunt down heretics all he wants. He's going to have a smaller, purer party with nothing left but, himself and David Duke. Okay, that's fine. We'll unite the rest of the country and put this thing back together. And here's the thing for the left. What they gain is enormous. I tell the story in the book because I live in Virginia now.
And again, tell people the name of the book again.
The book, you're so kind.
We keep saying the book.
We'll do it at the end, too.
It's called,
we'll put it in the description.
I should have a copy.
I was just going to say, it ought to be, Room Raiders going to hate you. You want to have it right.
I know.
Did you get an e-copy, John, or did you get the hard copy?
I've got an e-copy. I don't have a hard copy.
I may have to hit Paul up here for a signed
copy. If we had hard copies, they'd be signed,
Send me your address and I'll sign it and send it.
Okay, thank you.
But in your fire,
I'll even pay for it and send you a check if you'd like.
No,
I'm not looking for something free. I just want one of my
damn liberals.
That college kid that was me that sat there and watched. What was the name of the documentary with you? Got the War Room.
The War Room.
Sat there back when you had the huge beard and was like, I want to be that when I grow up.
It was red. It was red. I don't know what
That's
happened.
right. I know. Me too already. But I was going to say, I just want it signed. I'll pay for it
Happily. But here's what the left gets by helping moderates, because they did this in Virginia. Ralph Northam was lieutenant governor. He was a moderate to conservative Democrat from a very conservative Republican part of the state. Terry McAuliffe helped him, and he served with Terry as Terry's lieutenant governor. Then he ran for governor. He was challenged from the left by Tom Perriello. Charismatic, energetic, single-payer healthcare, very much in with the Bernie folks. Had worked for President Obama and was a congressman from Charlottesville.
Right.
Great guy. So they have the primary, and Northam, the moderate, wins. Well, now this becomes like a defining moment for Tom Perriello. You know what he did? He busted his ass. He went.
I remember he endorsed him right away too.
Endorsed him and
vociferously. Yep.
We saw him in the most godforsaken, tiny little places where no politician ever goes. He campaigned his heart out for Northam, and then the next year, all the liberals campaigned for more moderates to take over the state house. So that now the General Assembly, the Senate, and the governor, for the first time in 25 years, are all Democrats. What did the left get from that? They got Medicaid expansion. Medicaid expansion. So 400,000 Virginians are covered. They got the strongest gun safety laws in the region. They got first LGBTQ plus protections written into law in the South, in Virginia.
Right.
They got the strongest pro-choice law written into law. They got expanded voting rights, and particularly for felons, but also you got universal absentee voting, in which Ralph Northam, the moderate, has been the most liberal, progressive governor in the 400-year history of the Commonwealth of Virginia. That's what the left got by playing ball with a moderate.
This is the conversation. This is so emblematic of the sort of when I have these arguments, even the good faith ones with some of these folks online. I'm like, do you see what you got in Virginia when you get a conservative state and we take it over? Did you see what you got in Colorado? Similarly, when these states that used to be Republican states where we get a foothold and when we gain strength, and we finally get the trifecta. You see all of this. I mean, go ahead.
The progressive change that Northam and the Democrats have brought. By the way, again, Virginia's 400 years old. It goes back to 1619, which we now all know about. In the 400 years, the Virginia House of Burgesses, now General Assembly, is the oldest representative body in the Western, in the non-European world. First time in history we have a woman speaker.
That's right.
First time in history we have a woman of color as the majority leader of one of the parties. Charnel Herring, she's wonderful. Eileen Fillercorn is the speaker. These are really strong progressives and history-making women. So
the speaker, she's a Jewish woman too.
She's Jewish too,
which is again in the old Virginia, of Jefferson Davis, not something you would have thought would happen.
Right. And Northam is in court to tear down the statue of Robert E. Lee. 100 years ago, probably the most beloved Virginian, now I think quite rightly someone we don't want to revere anymore. And so Governor Northam is tearing down the statue of General Lee. He's in court, but he'll win. This is why I'm in the business, for progressive change, right? And I know I'm not a revolutionary. I don't want a revolution. I love Bernie. I don't want a revolution. I want progressive change for my democracy.
Well, that's where the two of us are on these questions.
Let me devil's advocate you, Cliff. But what do you mean you don't want a revolution, A, and B, why are you against revolution? No, I'm saying, what do you mean by that?
Well, because we're having one with Trump. It's a sandcastle principle. That which takes a long time to build up can be wiped out in an instant. And what replaces it is usually not better. I'm an institutionalist. I belong to the Roman Catholic Church, deeply flawed, the oldest Christian church on earth. I belong to the Democratic Party, deeply flawed, the oldest political party on earth. I've been married to the same woman for 31 years. We met when we were 19.
Don't call her deeply flawed. Just don't do it.
She's not deeply flawed.
Exactly. Very old and deeply flawed.
But everybody's different, okay? Everybody's different. But for me, we're in the oldest democracy in the world, the United States of America. So I believe in the wisdom of Deuteronomy. I drink from a well I did not dig. Right? So people who came before me, some of them terrible, some of them wonderful. They built this democracy and this republic if we can keep it. So that's what I'm for. I don't, if by revolution you mean overthrowing the political system, overthrowing the economic system.
Because you don't know I've said this so many times, and when I have these disagreements, and the two things I always point to Or you may want the Mensheviks, but you got the Bolsheviks.
Right.
You may want the Girondists, but you got Robespierre, and even worse. Revolution, when you overthrow all institutions and culture and everything, you have no clue what lies on the other side. Chaos does, and often what comes into power is is as bad as what was there, if not 100 times worse.
That's what Trump has brought. Trump has brought revolution to the Republican Party, and a party that I was strongly opposed to, but who produced people like George H.W. Bush.
Yes.
Now, I don't know if anybody named Bush can vote for Trump.
Maybe, what's his name down? George P.
George P.
will, because he wants to be governor of Texas and president. At least he'll pretend.
But he's on the wrong side of history, by the way. He should be an anti-Trump Republican, like his uncle George W. But that's I mean, Bush Sr., who I helped defeat, he signed into law the Americans with Disabilities Act. Okay, that was a really important and wonderful thing. That Republican Party is gone. It's gone in the Trump revolution.
He sat down with Democrats and negotiated in 1990 a budget and decided not to march on Baghdad, which turns out was a pretty smart decision. And I mean, I was against George H.W. back then too, but in hindsight, there were at least some very good things he did. I remember when the NRA talked about jackbooted thugs, with the ATF, what did he do? He publicly resigned from the NRA. I mean, think about today, a QAnon member becomes a House member, or nominee in Georgia, and you hear nothing, almost nothing. I mean,
Adam Kinzinger is the only one.
Yeah, Kinzinger is the only one I've heard say anything about that. Or no, also from your state, Paul. Oops, I knocked my Denver Riggleman, and that's because he's already lost in a primary to a loon too, so he feels like he can speak out now. But I mean,
Paul, let me ask you about this though. And again, I don't know if this is off your topic a little of expertise, although I think you know a lot about this. What's next? And what I mean by this is one of the themes Cliff and I always bring up is, God forbid the next time we get a Trump who actually knows what he's doing.
Right.
Tom Cotton would be the name.
We have now shown that being a Trumpist works, meaning you can get elected and maybe you can get reelected, but certainly if you break all the norms and even break all the laws, you will get away with it as long as you've got the backup in Congress. That makes me think somebody who's a lot smarter dictator next time says, no, what the fuck? Let's go for it, but put somebody who really can turn this country into a disaster.
That's right. I think that's right.
What do we do about? I mean, can we do anything about that? I don't know what.
Yes. Well,
reform the hell out of everything. But go ahead.
It's two things. It means Joe has to win by a lot, and I know it's unfair. I had this conversation with Robbie Mook, who ran Hillary's campaign. I said that. I said Joe has to win by a lot. I said no. Once you cross the end zone, you get 6 points. You win. Once you cross 270, you get to win. And I said no. This time he's got to clear the end zone, run out the back, through the tunnel, through the locker room, and get on the bus. Because I want to discredit Trumpism, not just defeat Trump.
Right.
So it means Joe has to win big, and I know it's not fair. Michelle Obama said this, basically. She said he's got to win by so big they can't steal it.
Right.
So that's step one. Then they have to govern with Nancy Pelosi and I think a Democratic majority in the Senate, the way the Virginia Democrats govern, deliver on progressive change up and down the line. For me, the first order of business would be Pelosi's H.R. 1. Which is the For the People Act. It's the most sweeping reform, more sweeping than Watergate, and it restores voting rights. It would be the most powerful systemic change you could bring to democracy. It is a.
Can I ask you something quickly, Paul?
Yeah.
I don't mean, but this is important along those lines, right? So let's say we have that massive night, and we knock out that. I won't use the word, John Cornyn in your state. And we win 2 seats in Georgia even. And, all this stuff happens because even if we have the greatest night, we're going to win probably 10 or 12 seats if it was like the most miraculous night ever. So we're still short of 60. You know where I'm going with this. And so we have all these sweeping reforms because I still feel very strongly that 2010, 2014, those elections happened because Mitch McConnell knew that he could just block everything from Obama and then blame the Democrats for it.
Right.
So to me, it's not just about politics. It's about policy. It's about changing this country, which is if the filibuster is sitting there and they're just as cynical, and I don't see any reason Mitch McConnell, if he doesn't lose, and that would be that second to Trump, I would dance in the streets. I mean, do we get rid of the filibuster? You probably know from everything I've said my position on it, but I'll let you give yours.
The short answer is yes. And I say this regretfully and reluctantly. I'm a very late comer to this. And my progressive friends have been way ahead of me on this. The reason I used to defend the filibuster is it required some level of bipartisanship. If neither party had 60, which is usually the case, neither party has 60. And so it requires you to cut deals with the other side, and it induces bipartisan cooperation. And so laws passed by a bipartisan group tend to be more long-lasting and less vulnerable to when the next
more legitimate. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I no longer believe that, because the filibuster ultimately, like so much we're learning about, relied on norms of decent behavior. And what broke my heart on this was the Merrick Garland crisis, where Mitch McConnell unilaterally packed the court. He packed it, right? We lost Justice Scalia, and Mitch McConnell, without a vote cast by anybody, decided the Supreme Court for over a year will only have 8 members. Just by himself, one person. And I looked, and McConnell, back in my day with Clinton, there might have been 10 filibusters in a year. McConnell had over 400. So he's made it the regular order. A long way of saying the Republicans have forfeited their right because they no longer participate in the norm. And so they have to lose their right to filibuster. And I worry about this. I talked to a former senator, I won't say who, from a very Republican state. And this guy said, don't do it. Don't do it. I'm against it. They'll have 52. But the thing is, if they have 52 one day, which they will again, they'll do it anyway.
That's the thing, is they'll screw us anyway.
That's what I'm saying. Like they proved with Merrick Garland and the blue slips recently, right? But they'll just, the minute they need to get rid of it, like with Gorsuch. And again, because I want to be clear where I'm coming from. I'm not coming from this from a radical point. I agree with you, Paul. Like I very much, when I thought the filibuster was something that brought folks together to have to work together 20 years ago, 25 years ago, that was one thing. But now at this point it's used so cynically, and I think it's literally used as a simple political strategy by McConnell, which is, if I can allow a Democratic president to have so few victories and so little to talk about and stop economic reform so people are hurting more, then I can say we're the change 2 years later, and they've done that now. They did that twice. And so that's my problem, is that I think for democracy to actually function better, for our institutions to work better, it's no longer something we can have, and it's a shame. But that's right.
But this is why we can't have nice things. Is that I mean it? It's not just Donald Trump. It is Mitch McConnell. And by the way, he's picked up the torch where Newt Gingrich laid it down. This is a generation-long Republican march to destroy norms of democratic life, little d, of a democracy. And here's why. David Frum said this, and he's been really instructive in this time. He's a guy, you know him, but he worked for President
We've had him
Bush
on the show a few times, too, and usually the left is mad at us for it.
Brilliant guy. He worked for George W. Bush, who, of course, I bitterly opposed. Here's what he says. He's got a book called Trumpocracy. Now I'm plugging Frum's book, but it's quite good. He says, when Trump Republicans believe they can no longer win in democracy, they will not turn loose of their belief in Trumpism. They will turn loose of their belief in democracy. And we are seeing that every day. And it's not simply Mr. Trump, it's McConnell. And unless and until we believe that the Republicans will play by the same norms that the Democrats do, Democrats have to do away with the filibuster. And again, I do not say that with any joy, and I get it. But we have to produce positive change. We have to produce progressive change. We have to get in. We have to make a real difference in people's lives, not just showbiz, not just theatricality, not just instead of, whatever, right-wing knuckleheads Trump brings to the White House. We have, Beyonce or something, right? I keep picking on her. She's from Houston, and I.
You do.
No, the point is that
because she's my favorite. I know I'm too old.
We have to be the practical party that says we're going to do these.
We have to be the adults,
and then we come into power and we do them, and we can't let this. I'll just say, from my experience, I'll never forget. I did a lot of work with Bloomberg on gun control, and after Newtown, we had a majority. We had for Barack Obama, and that was going to push the House. There are a lot of Republicans still in the suburbs there who were scared and were probably going to break from things we were hearing. But because of Mitch McConnell's filibuster, we don't make that change. And not only do people lose their lives as a result, but our party gets blamed. And people say, see, the Democrats can't get anything done. They can't even get something done after Newtown. And I just feel like we can't let that cycle keep replaying itself.
That's right. The two areas that I think we often overlook because the news of the day with Trump is so outrageous. The two areas, when he's long gone and in the dustbin of history, he will still be affecting our lives for the worse through the courts and through climate and the environment. Yep. These are two areas where we have to move immediately in a progressive direction to arrest the decades-long damage. It'll take a long time to repair the rest. But, with lifetime appointments, he's putting wholly unqualified, ultra-right-wing men, all white, onto lifetime appointments with power over our lives. And then on the environment, this week, he's opening up the Arctic National Wildlife drilling.
Yeah. My God.
Yeah. In a time of an oil glut. First off, we don't need the oil. Second, we really, really need the tundra. We really need that pristine wilderness.
Can he fully do that by executive order?
I don't know, but I think yes.
Okay.
But so that's why we have to deliver on change immediately. If Biden comes in, if the Democrats take the Senate, and positive change on the environment, on civil rights and racial justice, on the economy, on COVID, if that's blocked by the Tom Cottons and Rand Pauls of the world, Ted Cruz, then we're through.
Right. And we just empowers them to run on change in 2022.
Right. They are what Lincoln warned us about. People who will destroy the country and then be happy to rule over the ruin, as Lincoln said at Cooper Union.
And that great Cooper Union speech, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, we've got to be willing to call them out on it if they do it. This is one, I'm a big Obama fan, okay? Yeah. But it was one of the things I didn't like about Obama at the beginning was I thought he wasn't as experienced at being president, obviously. That sounds funny. He
National experience. I know what you're saying.
Experience in Washington to be president.
Right.
So that he wasn't quite, just like Trump. The first couple of years, he was an idiot, but he wasn't as good at being an idiot, right? So you need a couple of years to get it. But the other thing with Obama was he so believed in comity, C-O-M-I-T-Y, a word I use a lot, that, for example, he didn't want to destroy the women from Maine when they were being bad on Obamacare or whatever, or the stimulus. He didn't want to, my God, the stimulus. You could have destroyed the Republicans on that.
He had an 80% approval rating, after that election when America, and I remember thinking, and I get it, he was Jackie Robinson, and I think there are other complications. At the same time, I sat there and thought to myself, he won Florida and had a higher approval rating there than Mel Martinez.
Right.
He won Ohio and had a higher approval rating here than Voinovich. He won Indiana and could have pressured Dick Lugar. All these places where he had this high approval rating and he could have barnstormed.
And Americans were freaking out because of the economic crisis.
And could have said, you're going to go with me, or I'm going to tell people that you're blocking the economic recovery.
Here's my question with this. I don't want to say I'm worried about Biden because I'm not worried about Biden, but Biden brings a lot of that same committee, let's bring people together that Obama has. And will Biden have it in him constitutionally to turn around and destroy the Republicans for holding up COVID reform? Because you're right. Mitch McConnell and the rest of them, if we get the Senate, they're going to become exactly what they are today, using all the tools of the minority to destroy us. And are we going to call them out? Or are we going to say, even Trump, for example, are we going to blame Trump for stuff? Or are we going to say, we're going to be nice to the administration before us because that's what Democrats do?
I am quite sure he will be willing. He'll reach out a hand and try to get along. And if they refuse to compromise, he's going to roll them. Here's why. He lived through the Obama period. And I really don't fault President Obama. I think I
don't fault him, but
he believed that he was still in the Washington, as bad as the Bill Clinton time was, and they impeached my boss. And the notion that was some kind of halcyon time of bipartisanship is nuts.
Right.
But we could work with Bob Dole.
Right.
And I think President Obama sort of coming of age in those Clinton days, when we were cutting deals every day. And of course, the left hated it, but we got a lot of good stuff done. We got the Children's Health Insurance Program. 20 million kids got health insurance through a Republican Congress.
Yep.
Pretty
Family
amazing.
Medical leave passed, and I remember some of that stuff.
So we got a lot of progressive change done with a Republican House and a Republican Senate. It was tough. And Bill Clinton was very good at that. Obama would have been just as good if he'd had the same kind of Republicans.
Interesting. That's interesting.
They changed. Right. And so I love President Clinton, and he taught me everything I know about politics. But I don't think it was the difference in the president that made the Republicans so
Interesting.
recalcitrant.
And we should be clear, we're big fans of both of them. I'm not
right. I mean,
God, yes.
As
I said, I go back and forth on that with Obama because, again, I also realize he was the first, and there was going to be a unique kind of pressure and a unique racist types of appeals. And if he even seemed mad about something, the right was going to be like, see, he's an angry black man. And I mean, there just was, he had this sort of, go ahead, Paul.
I had this epiphany. 2008, I'm walking to the convention site in Denver, and I happen to be walking with the Reverend Al Sharpton. So he says, what do you think? And I said, boy, I really hope Barack, and I really shouldn't call him by his first name, but, I wasn't going to call him Senator Obama then. I really hope Barack shows the same kind of passion and even anger that we saw from John Edwards about the plight of the poor, especially. And Reverend Sharpton is, of course, really dialed in on poor folks. And he stopped while we were walking. It's a big sea of humanity walking into these conventions. And he stopped and he looked at me and he said, you've never been a black man in America, have you? And I said, well, no, Rev, you're very perceptive. And he said, John Edwards can be, this before Edwards had his problems. John Edwards can be pissed off. He can be angry. He said, but America will never elect an angry black man. He said, take it from me, I ran. And it was really instructive. It was so obvious to him. But again, you can't, it's hard to see what you haven't lived. And I haven't lived that life. And so the Rev taught me that. And I remembered that every day that I thought, Obama should be pounding on the table. And I kept remembering, wait, Clinton would have. Clinton could get away with that. It's just like now in politics, men can cry. And thank God. Right? But George W. Bush, especially President Obama, after Parkland, not Parkland, after Sandy Hook, the tears streaming down his cheeks. God forbid Hillary or Nancy cries. So there are unfair, sexist, and racist tropes that Hillary in her case and President Obama in his case had to deal with that I was like not even aware of fully until Sharpton had to tell me the obvious right to my face.
And that's probably right. Well, we've had Paul on for an hour and a quarter.
For an hour. I mean, what do we want to wrap up with? Paul, maybe, I don't know, I guess tell people a little more about the book then. Like what, no, but I mean.
Finish up with the book. And
what is the book then? I mean, is it sort of a laying out a recipe of how to beat this guy, or or just how bad he's been, or what is it?
Well, it's a compendium of the record. And then at the end of each chapter, because I'm still a political consultant at heart, I just say how Democrats can run on this.
Interesting.
Literally what to say. And it's not just for Joe Biden. Although I hope he reads and follows the book. It's for all of us. What do you say when they answer the door? And they say, well, I'm really worried about like this COVID thing, or I'm really worried about national security, and I want someone who protect my country. What do you say about the environment when you're in Texas and they say, oh, he's going to put everybody out of work? It's the idea behind this is to empower everyone to take the fight to Trump and the Republicans, and not on his personal characteristics, but on the effect it will have on your life. Like that farmer in Pennsylvania who spoke at the convention, who said, I voted for Trump and I thought he'd be good, and he has destroyed my farm. Wow. That's far more important. Because it's his life and his farm. And it's taking the fight to Trump and to Trumpism on the issues about the way that they affect my life. And I'm trying very hard, the only time I talk about Trump, to make sure it's about the consequences of his presidency in the lives of American people.
It was a good thing for us all to keep in mind, actually, really, seriously, because that's going to be most effective when we communicate why we need to get rid of this guy.
And the book again is You're Fired, The Perfect Guide to Beating Donald Trump. When did you finish the book, just so we know sort of where does it go? And what I mean is,
it goes through the COVID crisis.
You've got COVID. That was my question.
This is the first strategy book. It was written during my two projects to keep me sane, was sitting in this very room. And I grew my college beard back, and I wrote a book. I think the book turned out better than the beard. But
beard's kind of cool.
So I finished it during the COVID lockdown, and it was a blessing, first off, because it did give me something important to do that kept me sane. It also, I hope, empowers people, because I make the case of why COVID has changed everything: the way we live, the way we work, the way we teach, everything, and how we have to adapt to that. And I think it's the first book about politics written since the COVID crisis. And I hope in that sense it's useful to the changed times.
There you go, guys. You should all get it. Absolutely. I don't think we'd be where we are any of the positives we've gotten, Paul's probably the last quarter century been involved in a lot of them. And, that's why he's a famed political consultant, and we are lucky to have him here.
Well, guys, thanks. I love being on this show, and I'm happy to come back anytime. Please invite me back.
We're going to get you and Mary Trump at the same time. That'd be a fun
Wow.
She was a lot of fun, actually.
Yeah, we had her on. That was
She was really, it was fascinating, but like laughing. And it was just anyway, I don't know why I brought Mary Trump up. You got me thinking of her. But anyway.
Oh, my gosh.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks so much.
Thanks so much. Take care, buddy. Good luck with the book.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
If you want to remove Paul Begala, yes. There we go.
All right.
Well, that was great, guys. God, I just love talking to him. He's so interesting. He's brilliant. But he's fun. He's likable. He's the guy who just
he's
very positive, which I find interesting. He really, ironically, for somebody who is such a top political consultant, and he and James Carville got Bill Clinton elected. I mean, Hillary helped and Bill himself helped, obviously lots of people, but they were the two top strategists that really put Bill Clinton on the map. For being in that job and trying, he goes negative. He's happy to go negative on Trump, but he tries to keep a positive point of view towards voters and those kind of issues, which I always find fascinating. It's
and also, as he was saying there, it's not just anger for the sake of anger. It's not just going after Trump for the sake of doing it so we feel better. I mean, it's tough for all of us because there's a reason to hate Donald Trump. Lots of reasons. And it's easy to just look at the latest outrage.
And a reason to be angry at Trump voters, Cliff.
Right. And that's true too. And, but I think keeping it focused on that why Trump is so terrible and how that is hurting your life, it is. That's the key. You always see that's what moves people in the end.
Yep.
So, whatever. What can you say? I always love talking to him. It was great to have him on.
Yep.
And
all right. We've been going over a little an hour. I say we wrap up. It's probably been an hour and 10 minutes.
Something like that.
I mean, actually, we hit all the crazy issues of the day anyway. But later this week, we've got another guest Thursday morning.
Thursday, we do. Yes. Very good one. Who actually just had a surprise speech at the Democratic convention last night.
Oh, I didn't talk
there.
I totally missed it. I didn't watch it all, but okay. It's not Michelle Obama. I wish it were.
No, I know. Sorry, guys. It's not Michelle
God,
Obama,
if we could get her. We got to find somebody.
We do have an awesome guest who spoke at the convention. And I know. We want to get her.
Ava Longoria was really good, too, by the way, as the host. I was kind of thinking like having a celebrity as the host. She was just really good.
I don't know if you should say that. You see what happened when Marco Rubio tried to make fun of her being the host?
I saw him weigh in, but what happened?
Oh, he was ratioed in a way that he was ratioed in such a beautiful. Go look at the thread and what people had to say to him. He's just such a.
Well, he criticized having actors and celebrities at the convention, and we were like, okay, A, Ronald Reagan, B, Donald Trump, C, Clint Eastwood.
Well, how about just the two guys? Your two guys are a reality show star and a former talk radio host in Mike Pence. Yeah. That's your president and vice president.
Yeah.
What a joke.
But again, Ronald freaking Reagan.
I know. Ronald Reagan was most famous for lying in a bed with a monkey.
Oh, well, there you go.
I thought that was Lindsay. Not that I know. Look, Ronald may have had his own things going on with. Maybe the monkey was all into it. I just know that bedtime for Bonzo, he was hanging out, sitting on a bed, chatting with a monkey.
There you go.
That's all I'm saying.
All right, guys.
Nothing else.
We will talk to you on Thursday then. All right?
Yep. Take care, guys.
Bye.